So are you ready for another cool wine term? How about unoaked? You see, wines, when they're aged in these big guys, soak up the flavors that are in the wood. So things like toast and vanilla, they can be in your wine and they can taste great. But maybe you'd like to try something a little different, an unoaked wine. Particularly with white wines, you'll see winemakers age the wine in stainless steel, where it doesn't pick up the oak flavor and just shows off the beautiful fruit. Toss out unoaked at your next party. That's a cool wine term. So by now, you've got to be thirsty for more wine knowledge, and so Dan and I are here to help you with the Cork Dorks list of 5 things you can do to learn more after the show is over.
We're at the American Wine School with founder and director Marianne, who's traveled the world learning about wine to be able to explain it to people here in this area.
You know, Marianne, I've heard you say before that a good place to start to build that foundation of knowledge is a really good wine book. So we're listening. What's the idea?
Absolutely, Keith. I think a wine book is a great place to start, but I think you have to be a little careful on what type of book you pick up. Lots of wine books are really big, huge books that end up being coffee table books instead of people actually reading the book. So I like to recommend 101 books such as Wines for Dummies 101, or Kevin Zarelli's Windows on the World Wine course. I think that's an awesome book.
Well, but you can't taste a book. What's the next step?
Next step is probably to find a local tasting in your area, and a great place to start is with charity tastings. Not only are you supporting local charities, but you also get an opportunity to taste many, many wines without having to buy all those bottles.
So you've gone out to the local tasting, you've learned how to swirl, you're doing the sniffing, you're doing everything right, and you want to bring it home. So how do you go about setting up a wine tasting actually in your own home for you and your friends?
I always recommend that people get like-minded friends who are interested in wine. Everybody bring a bottle to the table and simply taste the wines. If you need help, usually you can go to a retail shop and ask your retailer to help you with wine selections.
Well, you find a lot by comparison and contrast in that setting, but when you really want to learn some facts and some details, what's the next step? How do you get a pro's perspective?
Now you're talking wine school, and what I would do is Google your local town and find a wine school near you. There are lots of classes being performed in professional schools or even in retail shops.
So you've been bitten by the bug fully now. You're going to the charity events, you're doing all these things we've talked about on our list. Number 5, that's got to be travel, right? You got to get out there and see it happening.
Yes, nothing tops traveling to wine countries. It's fun, it's tasty, it's memorable, and it gives you a good opportunity to see the vine in the soil as well as in the glass.
There's 5 easy ways to learn about wine where you live. This is one of our favorite cellars because it's full of great French wine, like this one.
You know, with all the talk lately about the hot new wine growing regions around the world, like Argentina and Australia, you might not think that France has anything new to offer. So here's the Cork Dorks list of 5 reasons why French wine is so special.
Number 1, France is the home of some of the greatest grape varieties in the world. For example, Cabernet Sauvignon was born in Bordeaux. Anytime you get a Cabernet from Australia, Chile, Napa Valley, that came from a vine that was born of a cutting that was hand-carried from Bordeaux to that country. France is the home of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Merlot. If you're going to have one of those varieties, it's kind of cool to try it from its home turf to see what it's really like.
Number 2, centuries of experimentation. Because they've been doing it for so long, the winemakers of France have found just the right places to plant just the right varietals. So when they're doing it, they're putting the right clones into the right types of soil. Maybe on a valley floor or on a hillside, they've really had a chance to experiment with what makes the best wine.
Number 3, France is a hotbed of innovation. For example, in the little village of Saint-Emilion, a group of young winemakers have gotten together to really experiment with extreme winemaking. How long can you keep a grape on a vine to get it ultimately ripe to make the richest possible style of wine? Great innovation coming out of the young winemakers in Saint-Emilion.
Number 4, at their very best, nothing beats a great French wine. Cabernet Sauvignon excels in Bordeaux in their finest wines. For Chardonnay and for Pinot Noir, you simply couldn't beat a white or red Burgundy. And of course, for sparkling wine, nothing beats a great champagne.
And finally, French wine was born for French food. You know, when you think of France, you think of great food, and the two industries grew up together. French wine was made with French food in mind.
For all these reasons and more, Dan and I say, vive la France!
Here's another cool wine term, length. You know, the most objective wine term of all is length. The amount of time after you swallow the wine that you can still taste it linger on your palate is its length. A regular wine probably will last with you about 15 seconds after you swallow it. A really good wine will go 30, 45 seconds, and a great wine will linger on your palate for a minute or more after you've swallowed it. Length, it's a cool wine term.
If you want to enjoy your red and white wines at their optimal best, there are some temperatures that you just have to know. So here's the Cork Dorks list of important wine temperatures. 45 degrees for white wines, not the 34 degrees that you'll find inside of your refrigerator. When you take your white wine straight from the fridge and pour them in the glass, the aroma's gone, the balance and flavor gets all out of whack. So, out of the fridge, onto the table for about a half hour before you want to serve them, and you'll love the results. What about putting your red wine in the oven? Would you ever try that? Of course you wouldn't. But red wines that are served too warm are a problem too. Get your reds to about 60 degrees. That's perfect serving temperature. The fresh fruit flavors that are there in red wine taste so much better when the wine isn't too warm. The alcohol also doesn't pop nearly as much when the wine is served at about that 60-degree temperature. So how do you get that? Put it into ice or put it right into the refrigerator and let it cool down for about 15 or 20 minutes before dinner, and it will also be a delicious glass of wine. Number 3, stay out of the wine danger zone. Above about 78 degrees or below about 40 degrees, wines can really start to expand in the bottle. So you want to be careful. Don't store your red wines or your white wines on the front seat of your car on a hot summer's day. Don't put your wines out in a cold garage because you could lose all of your investment right onto your garage floor.